So I'd like to invite the parent panel up. They're all going to kind of give an introduction to themselves, but the reason we're having a parent panel this year is because we aren't kind of in concert with the family meeting this year. So we didn't get that opportunity to kind of have that family perspective and that family exposure. So we invited some very special parents in that they are amazing advocates for their children as well as they are local. So both things work. So we have from right to left, we have Terry Gray. We have Brittany and Guy Calvert. We have Rachel Seger, and we have the Porath, so Mike and Sarah. So you guys can have a seat, or whoever you want. So we're going to have them go kind of one by one and tell their story. And what I asked them here to come here to do today is essentially tell you guys from a parent perspective what's important to them when it comes to research and clinical care. Because we kind of all get stuck, as a kind of a scientist myself, we all get stuck in our data and our grant writing and that sort of thing, and we tend to be able to lose that real family perspective. And I think hearing directly from families would be would be really beneficial, especially to the young researchers in the room that haven't quite been exposed to the kids and the families. I know that we had our fellows that came to the family meeting yesterday and presented, and I know that was almost invaluable to see have that experience and really see the families and hear what they're interested in. So, okay, so we're going to start with the Poraths.
Hi everyone, I'm Sarah Porath. Our daughter Annabelle is 10 years old. She'll be 11 next month. She was diagnosed at 26 months way back in 2008. Annabelle is isodicentric. I don't remember the exact span of her duplication, but it's quite large. She, to our knowledge, has not had any seizures. But she definitely has an autism diagnosis. She's on the spectrum. She's verbal and I'd say relatively high functioning, but definitely has her challenges. She's an awesome, amazing little girl. Her biggest challenges, I think, are anxiety and from not being able to communicate as effectively as she would like and we would like. And sometimes because of her anxiety, we see some aggressive behaviors. So that has been our biggest challenge in the last few years. But she is incredibly intuitive and emotional and seeks connection and attention and interaction with her brothers. We have two younger sons, 5 and 8, and us and her peers at school. And so getting through her anxiety and allowing her to kind of figure out coping mechanisms for her anxiety is something that we are trying to figure out and help her figure out. So as parents, that's something that we're dealing with and we're trying to look to all of you to help us with. Mike can talk a little bit about.
Yeah, do you want to pull up, just show a couple photos?
Yeah, if I can.
That's Luke.
This is Luke.
So I also just want to thank you all for being here and helping our kids. We got involved with the Dup 15Q Alliance very soon after getting a diagnosis. Carolyn Shannon was actually the first person to kind of look at the genetic report and talk to us more about what it all meant. And many of the folks in this room have been with us on kind of this long journey, and we just want to, we want to say thank you. We also want to raise the bar for all of you in terms of thinking about what you can do for these kids and the research that you do.
I was trying to log it.
Sorry. We were actually, a number of us were having dinner last night, parents and researchers together, and talking about, it's often, we don't have in our mission statement, Dup 15Q Alliance, the word cure. we have targeted treatments. And the truth is, cure is probably maybe too far of an extreme of when we really think about what we want for our daughter, but targeted treatments probably isn't far enough. Stormy brought up a great, I think, example of something that's more along about a transformative level of independence. And when Sarah and I first got the diagnosis for Annabelle, after wrapping our heads around it and really thinking about the journey that we were on, we talked about we wanted two things for her. The first thing was happiness, which you'd want for any kid. And the second was independence. And we didn't put limits on the level of what those two things would be. But from day one, in terms of really thinking about our daughter and where we wanted her to go and the support that we wanted to provide her, everything has been around happiness and independence. That's just kind of the way we approached it. And I think you guys can play a huge role, particularly on the independence. And so, when we think big picture about where we want to go, it's kind of moved from us from dreams to kind of hopes, and now it's becoming a little bit more of expectations that we believe that we can get here. And we really believe the folks here in the room are the people that are going to help us get there. So I want to make sure that you guys, I'm sure you already know this, but you have this amazing opportunity to impact people's lives. And it could start with Dup 15Q, kids, but because of our links to autism and epilepsy, this can reach so many more people. And I felt a level of urgency as a fundraising chair of the Alliance. Yesterday at the family conference, one of you was actually giving a presentation on how we can work to stop seizures. I was sitting next to an individual in a wheelchair who was profoundly affected by the syndrome, who actually started having a seizure right then and there. And that was kind of a kick in the ass to me to say, we've got to do more to raise, it's good. We got this really, great community in Dup 15Q Alliance, and it's super engaged. The fact that, about 1,400 families worldwide, we had 400 people come to, to LA for this, people flying in from Poland and China and Italy and Australia, just to come in and work together. We've got this great engaged community. We're going to add some zeros to the end of our fundraising, goals to really get this up there. But Sarah and I were privileged to talk to the new families before the conference got going, and asking them how many people had actually met another individual at Dup 15Q. About half the people had raised their hand. So many new families that were there, super engaged. I asked how many people have been to a clinic. Almost half raised their hand. That's amazing. We just got the clinic started a few years ago, and the fact that many people were engaged and was, it speaks to the success, I think, of the organization. So we're going to do more on the fundraising side. We're going to help you guys out, but we want to be partners to you, but we do want to raise the bar and have you thinking it's not just about publishing an article or advancing little by little, but it's the collaboration among all of you that will help us get to this level where you can literally help our children live much more independent lives.
So this is Annabelle. This was sort of a decade of Annabelle when she turned 10. For any of you who have seen enough pictures or met enough of our kids, you can see some facial similarities, the cute little nose and the wide set eyes. So this is Annabelle. This one down here is, you point to
this one?
The sniffing, no, the nose with the colors. She really has a sensitive nose, and her teacher had given her scented markers to play with at school. So that was one of my favorite pictures of her. But she's a very sweet, engaging little girl, and anything that we can do to help you help us improve the quality of her life and improve her independence and things that we didn't even know were possible 8 years ago when we received her diagnosis are now within our expectations, and that is incredible to us as parents and just extremely valuable. So thank you very much for everything that you are doing.
What's the biggest impediment to Annabelle's independence?
Anxiety. anxiety.
And I think, and you'll hear from the other parents, but I think what you'll hear a lot if you were at the family conference is seizures are a very big thing. Now we're fortunate that we're not dealing with seizures, and then it's basically seizures and autism are the two big things that most are dealing with. And Vanessa would know the stats on this. I think a little bit more than half of kids with Dup 15Q have seizures, and most are diagnosed with autism as well. It is kind of a different flavor of autism. I feel we were talking to scientists about this because you know way more about it than me. Yes?
Is the anxiety social anxiety or more generalized anxiety, situational?
I'd say it's more generalized, more situational. It's not, I don't think that Annabelle is necessarily thinking about what might go wrong in her head. It's more about she has anxiety surrounding when she is unable to communicate her needs and wants. That causes her anxiety, and she doesn't know how to react to certain situations. And so then we see her anxiety come out in behaviors. It started with self-injurious behavior where she would pull her hair out, and it's sort of evolved into, as she gets older and more physical, sometimes some aggressive behaviors, although most of the time it's meltdowns.
And just to add to that, for her, a lot of it's auditory. So we kind of think of it as the world it's kind of fast for all of us, but for her in particular, it's a little too fast. It's a little too bright. A little too loud. She'll hear a garbage truck coming up the street and talk about a garbage truck 30 seconds before we hear it at all. She's got kind of this super bat hearing. So a lot of it for her is auditory. For instance, at the family conference, being in the hotel lobby was really hard for her. So much activity going around, and so for her, it's kneeling on the floor and just trying to remove herself from the situation. And I think in Shefali's presentation yesterday, I really liked how you described it being that this kind of group of kids with Dup 15Q syndrome, the challenge is not motivation in terms of engaging with the world. These kids want to engage with the world. They don't have the ability to, and I think that's that's the challenge. On most Saturday mornings, just to kind of get her out and about, she has that same kind of. A lot of these kids have the same kind of walking gait. It looks a little bit like, an ET or something like that, walking down. She'll walk a half mile to me to go get a smoothie and a soft pretzel because she wants that smoothie and soft pretzel. And that, it gets her out. She wants to get out in the world and do more. She's introducing herself to more people. But it's giving her the ability to have a lot of that and removing the anxiety. That's what we're really hoping for.
Okay, let's move on to the next family, and then we'll do questions afterwards.
Hi, my name is Rachel Segers. My son, Luke, is 10, and he's just turned 10. He's my youngest of 3, so I've got a 19-year-old daughter and a 12-year-old son, and then I got Luke. And we were diagnosed when he was 17 months old, and we had just moved to the US here from the UK. And I was saying to a friend one day, what do I do with this new little baby? We're in the US. And they said, oh, you need to go and have, a checkup every few months. So I took him off for a checkup, and I remember the doctor saying to me, how long's he been doing this? And I was like doing what? And he had head lag. And I honestly hadn't noticed because he seemed very typical. He was eating super well, he was sleeping great, and he was just this chubby, chunky, gorgeous-looking baby. But then at about 6 months, when I went for this checkup and he had the head lag and they sort of referred us to neurology at Lucille Packard and Stanford, I was thinking, this is the crazy American system. I think he's okay. He's going to be fine. But anyway, and our neurologist was like, he looks pretty healthy. But I then became hyper-focused on him and noticed that he was delayed, and 9 months we were in early intervention, and we were going to sort of classes and having therapies, and he still looked pretty good to me. I kept thinking, he's looking pretty fine. But the delays started to become longer and longer, and he did walk at 18 months, and he wasn't making any noises, and he wasn't rolling over, and when I put him to bed, he just stayed very still. He didn't actually move very much. So at 17 months, we got him tested, and I have to say, it was a shock. I did not expect a Dup 15 diagnosis. And I remember thinking, okay, we're in early intervention, and I'd been a bit kind of, you know, but now I'm really into this. I'm like, we're going to do this. But I do know that our geneticist gave me the Dup Alliance website printout. So that was my go-to. I knew about the Alliance straight off the back. And when I went to the webpage to look at it, the first thing I looked at was the physician advisory, which was not a good plan because there was a few little deaths around that time. So it was kind of a very, very freakishly scary time. And I do remember thinking for a long time, for quite a couple of years, man, you know, is he going to wake up today? Is he going to wake up today? And he was a good sleeper, so sometimes I'd be, you know, at 9 o'clock in the morning, I'd think, oh, I really need to go in and check on him. But, you know, you get to a point where you just cannot live like that anymore, and he's a great little guy, and he's super cute, and, you know, he's non-verbal at 10, he's not potty trained, he walks and climbs and balances on so many things, it's absolutely terrifying, but he can walk, but when we go to airports, I definitely need my stroller for him. And I'm really grateful for my little badges that says assistive device because he's big, but, you know, he's in his stroller. And we use the stroller sometimes too for, you know, anxious situations. Doctor's surgeries are definitely one of those that he gets a little anxious over. So for me, the issues for Luke definitely are huge sensory. So I really loved it when I went into the conference the last few days, and I saw so many kids with chewy things and, you know, headphones and iPads, and I just think, God, what would we do without that iPad? I mean, we are obsessed with it, and I'm so glad we have it. In fact, we don't have just one, we have several. And so the huge sensory needs, what would it look like if he didn't have these huge sensory needs of tapping himself, flicking himself, jumping all over the place, chewing on things? What would it look like if he slept well during the night? He used to sleep really well, now we don't. We are up in the night and we are jiggling and bouncy and ready for action. And then, of course, we have to go to school, and then we sleep quite a bit of the day at school. So what would it look like if he was getting a good night's sleep and being able to learn at school without these huge sensory issues? It would look pretty good for him, I think. And when we can calm those down, it does look pretty good. He is very attentive. He's making lots of good eye contact. Does he understand what we say to him? I'm not sure. But, you know, every now and again we can say, go get your iPad, and he goes and gets it, or, you know, go wash your hands. And routine is really great for our kids. They really learn through huge amounts of constant routine. So, you know, we have a very, very routine schedule in our life, and to break it is pretty, you know, it's not good. We have dinner at 5:30, we have bath at 7, we have bed at 9, and snacks and all sorts of things in between then. So one of the things I was thinking about over the conference and what we can do for our kids is looking at those sensory, looking at sleep. We are not affected by seizures. We've had a couple of little blips in there through the years, but nothing that we've needed medication for. And I was thinking about, you know, kids with developmental delay and developmental disability. We're kind of put into an early intervention system at 3, and we're timed out of it at 3 years of age. And then we're put in the education system. And then there are all these therapies targeted at early intervention, and you can try and keep them going longer, but in the end, you know, at the end of the day, you know, our psychologist at Lucille Packard said we should try pivotal response training. And I was like, great, I think that would be kind of good for him. I know about it. And then it was like the cutoff age is 7. So, and he's 10. But mentally, he's about 2. So, you know, how can we have these incredible therapies given to our kids while they are still kind of willing to have them? Because I do know they get to an age of, you know, they get towards teen years and they don't want to be going to speech therapy or they're going to physical therapy. They're kind of done with all being interfered with. And that's what I've heard from my friends who have kids that are sort of becoming teenagers. So, you know, I mean, I know we talked about ABA therapy being an umbrella for all these other kind of wonderful therapies. Jasper was one I heard of yesterday, and DIR and PRT. But insurance companies only pay for ABA. They don't pay for any other kind of great therapy that you could have. And I think it would be great to share these therapies online. I mean, everybody's watching YouTube. Why can't we see techniques and therapies being shown on YouTube? Because you could take your family to understand PRT in Santa Barbara, but then you've got to explain it to your teachers because they've got to follow through. You've got to have your nannies, you've got to have your therapists, you've got a whole team of people around you. So when looking at therapies, it's got to be really, you know, accessible to the whole family, the whole team, the school. And I found with school, they're very, very willing to help in any way possible. If I say, can we trial this for 2 weeks? Can we trial potty training? Can we trial anything? They are super, super willing. And so I would like to see, you know, therapies and, you know, being broadened and being accessible to more people, you know. So anyway, that is my Luke, and he's very smiley and very happy, and he's a real blessing, and I'm very, very much in love with him. He's really great. So thank you.
My name is Terry Gray, and my son's name is Spencer Gray, and he has a hard time with S's and calls himself Pencer. And he's 22 years old. He'll be 23 on August 15th. And I had Spencer later in life, so I had an amniocentesis, and it came back that there was this duplication, or there was something wrong with Q15, or, you know, the chromosome 15. And since he was born in 1994, they told me it was either Angelman syndrome or Prader-Willi, and they didn't really say anything about inverted dupe at all. And so I had to make a decision whether to terminate the pregnancy or not. And I was 42 years old. He was my only child, and my husband and I sat down and had a really long talk, and they sent us to Pasadena to have an ultrasound, and with a fetal heart specialist. And the fetal heart specialist said, he has a great heart. And he said, I want to tell you, I want to emphasize that what we see, you know, it's not going to, it will just grow better. I mean, it doesn't go backwards. And my husband and I kept hearing, he has a great heart, and we decided not to terminate the pregnancy. And but we had no idea we had no idea, you know. And when he was born, we were all aware, and I actually asked him to keep the umbilical cord fluid. I don't know if they ever did, but he was born in Santa Monica. Anyway, in case we ever needed it for anything at some point, I don't know if they have it or where it would be. But anyway, he was born, he was fine, he was a big boy, he was 9 pounds, and then his APGAR score dropped, and they put him in an incubator, and he's a big boy in this, I mean, he looked huge in that room, and he stayed there for 5 days, and you know, it's like in hindsight, I'm really grateful that happened, because that's when his intervention started. And the regional center was knocking at my door, you know, because I think they do that today. If a child's in an incubator, the regional center is right there. And so So the regional center came knocking at my door at a very young age, and then I got a letter at 4 months of age to go to UCLA and have a genetics test. And that's when he was diagnosed with inverted dupe. And, you know, and we put the microscope on him, like, you know, I had no idea. And the regional center came and watched him. So he had early intervention from a very young age, and 4 months old. And she helped him crawl, and then he had, and I don't know if this has anything to do with inverted dupe, but he had a little cerebral palsy in his Achilles heel wouldn't go down. So, so they sent us to the doctor who put a brace on his foot, and he had a brace on his foot, and he kind of, I don't know how well it really helped, to tell you the truth, because he kind of walks funny. I don't have any pictures of my son, but he might be here at 12 o'clock. Dr. Shannon saw Spencer, I think, when he was a couple years old, and he was her first patient. And so I saw her over the family meeting, and she missed seeing my son. You know, she didn't see him, and she hasn't probably seen him in many years. So she said to me, "Hey, could he come over here?" And I called his support staff. He has support staff today, and they're going to bring him over here so you can meet him. And he's a happy guy. I had all the intervention I possibly could have. I sent him to special needs school. He has a seizure disorder. His seizure started at six years of age. I remember saying to Dr. Spence, who was his neurologist at the time, you know, his seizure started when his language started. Isn't that bizarre, you know? And she said, and if we don't get the seizures under control, he's going to lose all his language, you know? And so... say that? Oh, my God. Oh. Hi. Yeah, you did. You told... Because you know what? I didn't want to give him medicine. I really didn't. I mean, like, he's been...
That I remember.
Yeah, right? You know, I mean, like, do I really have to give him medicine? He's been on Depakote since he was 6 years old, you know? And I don't, anyway. His seizures, you know, got better at 6. And then when he was 16, he had the falling down seizures. And we had to put him in a what I call a chemistry experiment, and we tried Depakote, and I can't even tell you all the different things we tried. And I mean, his seizures were so bad, he fell down and cut his head and had stitches and ended up in the emergency room a few times because of his seizures. He lost all his school that year. He slept, he had seizures and slept. He was in a special needs school, so they kept him there all day. And I was really grateful for that, because even he might have been awake a few times, maybe he heard some things, you know. His language is minimal. That came, you know, even though it started at 6. Today, he can't tell you how he feels, but he sure can tell you when he's hungry. He came up to me and said, "French fries?" I said, he said to me, he goes, "Are you tired?" I go, "No." "Are you tired?" And he had gotten up really early, and he went down and laid down and fell asleep. He's had problems with sleeping all his life. It was very, very difficult. I had to learn how to wake up and go back to sleep right away. If he got up 3 times in the middle of the night, then I was gone. But I learned how to get up, put him back to bed, and go back to sleep. Today he actually takes sleeping medication, and it seems to help a lot. And when he does, he can sleep. The other thing he has low tone, and he's always had low tone. And because of that, his endurance isn't great, except for when he went to Magic Mountain for 14 hours. You know, amazing. He has the anxiety they talked about. Fireworks it's awful. And I lived in a city where they had allowed fireworks on the streets at 4th of July. And I used to have to put him in the shower, you know, while the fireworks were going on. And I heard that one day one of his support staff took him to, when he took him to Magic Mountain, he says, oh, we'll stay for the fireworks. And his support staff said, I don't think that's a good idea. And he goes, oh, yeah, well, we'll try it. Yeah, you know, and it's really, really sad. It's almost like his whole, like he is, the fireworks got into his whole body, and he just, like he's on fire, and he rolls in the grass, and he runs, and I mean, it's horrible to watch, you know, so we try to avoid that as much as possible. Now, I've tried to desensitize him by giving him an iPad, because he'll watch the fireworks on an iPad, but man, out in real world, forget it, you know, and you know, we'll be driving down the street, and he'll go, fire truck, and I'll go, okay, I don't hear it yet, and it comes. Another time, you know, like I said, his language is really limited, and one time I heard him say something, and I couldn't understand it. I asked him to repeat it. He did. Still couldn't understand it. He repeated it one more time, then I heard it. It was a helicopter. So, you know, I thought to myself, isn't that interesting? He knew what a helicopter was by hearing it. And they sit in school and do these trials that he fails at all the time. There's this big disconnect. The school system, that's a whole different story. But, you know, but we tried everything. He doesn't read or write, he could care less. You know what he does? So what we've been able to do is just kind of pay attention to what he liked, and that's what he does today at 22 years of age. The seizures are terrible. I wish we could get those under control without medication. I don't know if that's ever a possibility. Today he's on Lamictal and Depakote. Dr. Jesty, who Spencer calls Dr. George, we don't know why, but he calls her Dr. George, you know. And he might even think he's seen Dr. George today, you know, and he just makes stuff up, you know. Anyway, he does make us laugh. We do get a big kick out of him. Anyway, so she wants him to do an EKG, and last time we did it, he went on. They had to sedate him. They sedate him. He got out of it, and they pulled all the leads out of his head. You know, great Spencer. And but he's doing really. You know, the other thing was the sudden unexpected death, and you know, Spencer was quite a bit older when we heard about that, and that was enough to freak me out as a parent. You know. And one of the other neurologists said to me, you know, I saw him have a seizure one time where he had food in his mouth, and I couldn't open it, and I put him on his side. I was hoping he would get the food out, and I was afraid he was going to choke. But I was told that he was pretty strong, that he probably wouldn't have done that. But you know, another time he ran. He ran in front of a car, and I screamed, and the car stopped, and he thought that was more fun than a person should be allowed to have. And every time he saw the street, he would yell "street," and I had to physically hold him. So you know, I mean, there's a lot of care that I cannot leave him by himself. Today he has a great life. He has 5 support staff, and he kind of has more fun than a person should be allowed to have. Anyway, that's it. Thank you.
So my name is Brittany Calvert, and this is my husband, Guy. We're the parents of Ariel Calvert, and she is almost 8 years old. She's adorable. I don't have a picture, but we're going to try and bring her down so that you can meet her. When she was born, she had issues. She was not a preemie, but the hospital staff sort of viewed her as a preemie. She had a lot of issues that preemies have. And the main one was that she, on her second day, when her mouth was too small to nurse, so we had to sort of give her through a feeding tube breast milk. And then when we started doing it, when we changed to a bottle, she would start turning blue while she was drinking. She basically couldn't swallow and breathe at the same time. And so that had her in the NICU for about 5.5 weeks, during which time and this is probably one of the best NICUs in the world, Lucille Packard up in Palo Alto. I mean, awesome care, excellent care. They probably ran every single test that they could possibly have run except genetic tests. We were told that because she didn't have any kind of facial or other markers, signs that would indicate something genetic, they said, oh, it probably wasn't that, let's do this $10,000 other kind of test that we've got. So anyway, we were there for a long time. That problem eventually went away when she was about 4.5 months old. And during that whole time, though, she seemed in other ways like a preemie. She was very, very low tone, kind of lethargic. She slept a lot, and she was also just, when she was awake, very low energy. And that lasted really until she was about 18 months old. We discovered seizures. She was having seizures at a little over a year. We now think those were misdiagnosed, that they actually were infantile spasms. They looked like infantile spasms. I've spoken with people who know Dup 15 and who are, seizure experts in Dup 15Q, and they say, yeah, that was probably spasms. Those went away on their own just before we started. We were about to start the ketogenic diet. We had tried Keppra, it didn't do anything. They mysteriously went away on their own after she had the flu for a few days and didn't eat much. So she was seizure-free for about 2 years. And then they came back, not spasms, but tonics, and we now struggle with seizures. That's a big issue for us. Shefali could probably give a 1-hour presentation on the history of aerial seizures and what we've tried to do with them. So we're now about to start the ketogenic diet again, and I'm hoping that, like last time, a few weeks before we start, they'll mysteriously disappear. But that's been one of our biggest struggles, is the seizures. They change, they get, over a year ago, she was sick, wasn't eating, we had to get her to the hospital for IV fluids. Her seizures, were spiking, and we got them down a little bit, but they never seem to come down, so they've kind of gotten worse. They change, we give her meds, and that changes them, but doesn't make them better. So it's just been it's been a real struggle the last couple of years, especially trying to get her seizures under control. We are trying CBD with her. That helped a little bit, but hasn't knocked them out. And as I said, we're getting ready to start the ketogenic diet. So for us, seizures are a huge issue. Also, of course, SUDEP. We're terrified. We're absolutely freaking out about that. And just from what I know, what I've seen of some of the cases, just because there are cases where seizures were under control, and I believe one case where there was no history of seizures, I'm just not convinced that it's necessarily a seizure event that's causing it. And I just, if I had a few $1 million to hand to you guys to research something, I would say figure out how SUDEP happens and figure out what we can do to prevent it, whether it's pharmacological or something else. We just want to be able to do something to prevent that happening. As far as her development, she was definitely slow with everything. She started walking at about little over 2 years of age. Continues having low tone, which is improved with PT and with horseback riding and swimming. Her main struggle, really, I would say, besides the seizures, is cognitive and especially language. So she is nonverbal. She has a few words. She'll say up, she'll say go, she'll say egg, but mostly that's about it right now. And we're focusing on picture exchange, iPad, getting her to communicate. She's very motivated to communicate if she wants something, she will find a way to show us that that's what she wants.
I think she's at her most articulate and motivated when she's resisting epilepsy meds. So it's time to give her meds.
She's very,
she knows exactly how to squirm, exactly how to dodge.
Yeah. She's very motivated, and she was very motivated to get moving as a child, to get up and walking. We didn't have to push her on that. She was very, very motivated. The struggle is more teaching her to communicate appropriately, teaching her to engage and to communicate when maybe she's not so motivated to go along with what we want her to do. You know, she's getting big enough now that when she decides to sit down in the middle of the sidewalk, it's more of a struggle to get her up and going again. So that sort of level of communication of you know, if you can just come along with us, we'll go home and you'll get something nice kind of thing, that's something we're working on a lot. So I would say just her cognitive ability and her ability to communicate are our biggest struggles. Just also safety issues. She has no fear. She will climb up on, she loves to climb. She would climb up on, you know, the highest thing. Probably we've had to take anything she can climb up on out of the room that she's in most of the time, because she would just climb up there and be happy until she fell down. She loves the water. She loves to swim, and that's another, you know, we're teaching her how to swim now, but that's another huge hazard, because if she was near a body of water, she would go right to it and just jump right in and, you know, at this point, not swim. She loves the outdoors. Some other people have mentioned like sensory issues and sensitivity to too much sensory input. Ariel seems to be the opposite. She gets bored and she wants to have you know, something to listen to, music, something. She has always wanted to go outside. That's another thing. You know, we've got to make sure that the doors are secure, because once she's strong enough and big enough, she will go outside, and then she'll just be running down the sidewalk. She loves the outdoors. She loves exploring. It's funny, because one of our first struggles when she was first in therapy at about a year of age, our struggle was just to get her to pay attention to something, just to get her to be interested in something, to track, to like move to a sound, to respond to things. I mean, she was just almost lethargic. I mean, she would just kind of lie there, and it wasn't her hearing, it wasn't her sight. We had those tested. It was just, I think it was that she just didn't have the energy or the bandwidth kind of to be able to pay attention to things. Now we have to lock stuff up, because she just wants to get into everything and explore, which is great. But she doesn't have those sensory. She loves, you know, going into a new place where there's new sights, new sounds. If there's a lot of noise, she'll squeal. She'll be like squealing with delight, because, you know, that's exciting, that's fun. So we actually have the opposite kind of situation with her. Anything else? Those are sort of the big issues. Yes.
How about with fevers? How do the kids generally do with fevers? Do any improve with fevers, or is it
That's interesting question. Interesting question, because we've had both experiences. So the first time that her seizures went away, what had happened was, she doesn't get sick very often, but she had a flu for about a week. She wasn't eating or drinking much for about 4 solid days. She did have a fever. I think it was very mild. I don't think it was even, you know, high enough to do anything about. But that's when her seizures went away. And we thought at the time, you know, maybe she went into ketosis because she wasn't eating much. I actually checked her for ketosis and she wasn't, but maybe she was close enough. So that was one experience with fever. Other experiences with fever, again, it's been like a handful of times, 2 or 3 times, hasn't affected her seizures. The most recent time, though, that she had a fever, and this was about a year ago, it did. Her seizures did get worse with fever. So it's interesting that early on, the first several times she had it, it either improved it, I think probably not. I think it just didn't have an effect. But then this last time it did. It did make them worse. Yeah. She did when she had, let's see, she had an MRI, and then she also had that horrible thing where they stick the tube down their throat. Yeah. That was back when she was in the NICU, and they were trying to figure out they thought maybe there was a blockage in her throat or something, and so it was before seizures started. Yeah.
I've one family who swears that every time their child has had a surgery, that he goes for, and he has the Lennox Gastaut phenotype, and he goes for 5 or 6 months seizure-free after general surgery.
Wow. Maybe we should try that. Interesting.
And I don't know what that is.
That's interesting. Wow. The other thing I just wanted to say was, so, you know, our big issue again is we just want to find out what what is actually causing SUDEP, what's really going on there, and what can we do to prevent it, even if it's not a drug, even if it's something else. And just generally, we'd also like to see more research into nutritional interventions. If there are, I mean, a lot of parents are doing things like the fish oil and the magnesium, you know, supplementing. Sometimes supplementing because we know that a med is depleting something. Sometimes just because, you know, we read an article and this sounds really good, you know, magnesium, the B vitamins. But we would like more research on, you know, what of these nutritional interventions can maybe help to down-regulate some of the genetic expression, or can just help generally with neurological health. You know, there is obviously some evidence out there for some things, but we would love to have like some actual for our population. What should we be doing? What supplements should we be giving them? Because we're all kind of giving them, you know, handfuls of stuff, but we'd like more on that. Yeah.
I had a question. Did you see a regression of her abilities when the seizures arose?
We didn't. So what happened was, and it would have been hard to tell at that time because her abilities were very limited. So we noticed her first seizures at a little over a year of age. We think and they were like that spasm kinds of things. When we saw the first big seizure, we took her in and had an EEG, and they said, oh yeah, she's having seizures, watch for things. We then started reading everything and then, you know, found out about spasms, realized she'd probably been having those for several months, and we just didn't know what they were. We didn't notice a regression then, but I think that's also because she was at such a low level, it would have been hard to regress. We did notice when her seizures went away, that was a big sort of blossoming period for her, and that was about when she was around 18 months or so, for a couple of years. But when they came back again, when she started having tonics about 2 years later, we definitely didn't notice a regression, and we also, I mean, she still kept making progress. So we haven't really seen a correlation between, other than that first time when the seizures went away and there was the blossoming, we haven't really seen a correlation between seizures and regression.
Does she have generalized seizures at all?
You'd have to ask Shivali. So has she actually had them, or is that what she's?
No, I mean, not that. I mean, generalized on EEG. Okay.
So.
I mean, I think, yeah, we can have. Sure.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
in interest of time.
Yeah. Sorry.
Okay. So in interest of time, what I want is for each of the parents basically to say two things, the two take-home things that you want the clinicians and researchers to know, that you want to know or want them to do for you guys and for your kids. You get 2 words. That's it.
Collaboration would be a word, because I think that's, you know, very important. And beyond that, I'd say urgency.
Independence, as much as can be expected, or, you know, hoped for and expected, and anxiety.
Yeah, I would say definitely seizures. That's a very big part of our lives, and although we're not in that category, there is a very high chance that we will be. So I would definitely like to see seizures being targeted, and, you know, definitely sensory issues surrounding our kiddos too.
SUDEP, and it's a tough one because there's so many other things. I would say, and non-pharmacological solutions as well.
I'm with everything that they said. You know, the seizures and it's a terrible thing. You know, I didn't mention that my son he has seizures today, even with 2 medications. So the seizures are a really big deal because it does affect the quality of his life, and that's the biggest thing for me.
All right, so we're going to take a 10.
Can I say one?
No.
I'm going to rebel. So I haven't said anything yet, so I'm going to.
He's like, you got to stay on time, and now he's rebelling on me.
So I just want to tell a quick story. It's going to be more than 2 words. You know, I agree with Brittany that, like, SUDEP and seizures are the clear and present danger for Ariel. But in terms of quality of life, it's, you know, and in terms of transformational changes, learning and language are right up there. And I want to tell you a story. When it's a few years ago, my son was about 7 years old, and Ariel's 2 years young. Ariel's our daughter that has the syndrome, and he said to me, he normally doesn't notice Ariel. Well, he's fond of her, but she's part of the environment. And he said, look, Ariel's getting all these speech therapists and physical therapists. She can't talk. I'm pretty sure when I was 5 years old I could talk. What's going on with that? How come she gets all these speech therapists? I never got all that. And I said, well, she's got this disorder. This disease she got when she was born with it. She's kind of, we think she has things to say, but she can't do it because her brain doesn't let her. And he said, oh, so she's kind of like in brain jail. And I said, that's right. She's in jail, but she's trying to break out, and we're trying to help her. So it's kind of a jailbreak, and we're doing everything we can with all our friends to break her out of jail. And so I said to him, so are you in or are you out? Are you gonna? And he said, yeah, we'll break. And he got consumed with this idea of brain jail. So that's how he thinks of Ariel syndrome. But I put to you the same question: are you in or are you out?